listening to Heroes Forge, a Heroes of the Storm podcast.
What is going on, Forgers? Welcome to Season 2, Episode number 82 of Heroes Forge, a community-driven podcast all about Heroes of the Storm. This is your show host, Jeff Reynolds, and I'm here with the co-host of the show, who some of you already know is more awesome than Comic-Con. It's Kristen Ashton. What is going on, Kristen?
Oh, so many things. Great week for gaming, and also this Ready Player One movie has caught my interest. Steven Spielberg's new film, and the trailer hasn't shown anything, which says to me there is an interesting story.
Oh, there really is. If you haven't read the book, Ready Player One, get out there and read it. It's a short read. It's a quick read. It's very, very interesting, and really interesting if you're into the decade of the 80s. I mean, it's really good. So go out there and read the book. Lots of trailers coming out at Comic-Con. Did you see the Thor Ragnarok trailer?
I am saving that for later tonight, to be honest, because I wanted to get through the ones I didn't know about. The IPs that are a bit more scary because I'm not familiar with them. But Thor Ragnarok, I am so ready for. I was sold when the title of the movie was called Ragnarok.
Oh yeah. And I'm telling you what, I kind of fell off the Thor train on the last film. I mean, it was getting dark, it was getting really gritty, and not really in that Marvel cinematic universe in my mind, in my opinion. So when they released this, it kind of has a Guardians of the Galaxy feel to it. It's kind of more lighthearted. The trailer is awesome. I can't wait for you to watch it. Speaking of awesome things, we got to talk about Garrosh Hellscream. Come on, a new hero announced already.
Loktar Ogar, everybody. We've got huge shoulder pads, and hopefully we've got an assassin who can walk in, soak damage like a tank, and deal damage like nobody's business. Maybe even sunder armor?
Ooh, I like where you're going there. I really like where you're going there. Oh, I can't believe it, Kristen, that there's already an announcement for the next hero. It's like they're just hitting us left and right with these characters coming into the game, and it's gonna build it up so much that when we get to BlizzCon, they're gonna show us all of the heroes that they released over the last year, and it's gonna be incredible.
It really is, and it's always so surprising how many heroes release in a single year, because you think this one hero's been around forever, but then you see that list of what they've done and you go, oh, I guess so-and-so was earlier this year, or I can't believe so-and-so has been out that long already.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane, and the amount of learning that it takes to get these games really, really under your belt to know what these new heroes do. I mean, Stukov's barely been in the Nexus for, a couple weeks here, including the PTR, so people are just getting comfortable playing with and against him, and then we're going to hit him with a new hero, and then a new hero after that, and then BlizzCon, and it's all going to just, explode.
Exactly, and everyone will play Kel'Thuzad after BlizzCon. That's what I'm calling 10-man Kel'Thuzad games.
That's right, I smell a brawl if I ever smelt a brawl before, which brawls really don't smell. Let's talk about the next thing on this list here, which I had the awesome pleasure of joining TBK Zord on the latest episode of Lords of the Storm, and my goodness, we talked for over 2 hours about Stukov, where the game is headed, and we even did a little mini forge, so check out the latest episode of Lords of the Storm. It's a doozy. It's a long one, but man, it is packed with all this information. And I have to give a huge shout out, Kristen, to the entire Blizzard community surrounding Heroes of the Storm. I mean, it is so cool, and I said this on this latest episode of Lords of the Storm as well, that podcasters from different podcasts that all cover different aspects of this game and look at the game differently and enjoy it immensely can join up together and do some really cool, crossover episodes with each other, and the community is all there part of it. I mean, it's just a really, really awesome time.
And it's fantastic, too, because each show brings its own flavor, which means Heroes is reaching an audience heretofore unseen, right? Because it seems like everyone's specific style of listening pleasure is covered with these podcasts.
Oh yeah, it's so cool to be able to do that. So listen to all of the Heroes of the Storm podcasts out there, which it's growing all the time. We have constant new podcasts coming up and people emailing us and all of this stuff. So listen to all of them out there. And Speaking of more Blizzard news here, Hearthstone is getting a new expansion.
It is, and it's taking a really cool route, which I wonder if it'll be able to be topped after this, because how many of us love the Frozen Throne story? It's the ultimate in the Blizzard universe in terms of really, really strong, great characterization and people being forced into situations meaning the best. It's just a wonderful, wonderful tale. And so here we have Hearthstone taking on the Frozen Throne.
That's right. Knights of the Frozen Throne is coming to Hearthstone. Really cool ways of changing your hero in the game. I mean, I know a lot of people are looking forward to another hero being added to the lineup for Hearthstone, but this kind of morphs, not kind of, it absolutely morphs all of the heroes that are in the game into Death Knights. It looks really cool, and if you had a chance to go to Comic-Con this weekend in San Diego, they actually had the Lich King Arthas himself serving ice cream to people down there. So I'm jealous of everyone that got to experience that.
That's adorable. Did he deny Uther and Jaina cosplayers? Because I would still be a bit bitter.
Absolutely. We all know how you feel about Uther, Kristen, and we wouldn't expect anything less than you denying Uther an ice cream cone. But speaking of Death Knights, I think there's a little bit of foreshadowing going here, and we need to get on with the Forge because that's what we're here to do. So let's Forge.
Let's Forge.
That's right, that's what we're here to talk about, is characters that aren't currently in Heroes of the Storm and what they might be like if we brought them into the game. But this week is a really special episode that we do once a month. It's called the Featured Forger. And Kristen, why don't you tell a little bit about what we do every month for the Featured Forger?
So every month we take a person's build, something someone has sent into us and lovingly crafted into a hero. And then Jeff and I take one of the pieces of this incredible craft and we expand upon that even further. So we have this 3-build fleshed out hero by the time the episode is done.
Yeah, I mean, talk about kits upon kits upon kits, right? I mean, and the hero that we're talking about this week is definitely an example of how there are 1,000,001 different directions you can go with this hero. And just getting inspired from a listener like you out there and sending us this idea, I mean, it really gets us the snowball rolling and tons of ideas just come out. So, Kristen, who is our featured forger this week and what hero are we talking about?
This week, it is Joseph G, and we are taking on a Death Knight.
Death Knights. Now, this is really cool to be able to talk about Death Knights because I, believe it or not, never rolled a Death Knight ever. I mean, it wasn't just in my, or I thought at least it wasn't in my wheelhouse. I didn't really, understand it and all that stuff. It's actually very difficult. But after doing research for this episode, I'm like, how fast can I log in and create a Death Knight?
So did you how fast did it take?
About 35 seconds after I was done with this, I'm like, which direction do I want to go here? And now there goes all of my free time into Death Knight. So thank you, Joseph G, for sending in this wonderful build and taking away all of my free time. I actually really do appreciate it.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is good. Good stuff to take away your free time, right? You're getting to explore this whole other story that was crafted really, really well for the Wrath of the Lich King expansion.
Yeah, did you roll a Death Knight? Have you played one before?
No, and let me tell you all, I have a very serious dedication to heroes that I roll with. I become very, very all or nothing. So in World of Warcraft, I have not rolled much beyond my undead rogue because I am an undead rogue, dedicated. Whether they're buffed, whether they're nerfed, that's my character.
I love it. I love it. I am like that too with a lot of things. But ever since we started this show, you know, a year and 3/4 ago, I've been trying to get into all of those other classes and things like that. And I know you have too. And it's kind of inspiring to know the basics of these characters in order to get rolling with it. And this build that Joseph sent into us for the Death Knight a while ago, actually, I mean, it is really cool. And bringing this whole Death Knight craziness to the Nexus, other than Arthas, who's his own kind of thing, I like to believe. These Death Knights, you know, they're the playable characters, so they have their own, you know, rotations and abilities and stuff. You could go a million directions.
You really could, especially too when you bring in the fact that they use runes and then they have 3 different builds. You know, you could go unholy, you could go with blood, you could go with frost. So what do you do to kind of marry together this idea of a Death Knight? And is there one single variation of the Death Knight that the vast majority of players would see as a Death Knight?
Yeah, or would they just have to include all the different variations of Death Knights? You could have a different character for each different type of Death Knight. I mean, it can go anywhere. And that's, again, what makes Heroes of the Storm so cool, is that there are millions of different combinations of things that they could put in this game. And Joseph happened to send us one that was just stellar. So his build, of course, as always with the Featured Forger episode, will be included with ours. And what we did, like Kristen said, is we took one of his abilities each, a different one, and we built a whole kit on top of that. So make sure you check out our website when the episode is over, HeroesForge.club, for all of the builds, and you can give us all of your comments and thoughts as well. So let's get into this. Let's start forging. Kristen, you're gonna go first this week with your Death Knight build, and the first thing we always talk about is, where is this Death Knight from? What part of the Warcraft universe? Give us a little background on it before we get started.
Cool. Originally created by Gul'dan to replace the slaughtered warlock clans, Death Knights were the corpses of fallen Stormwind Knights brought back to life by being fused with the souls of the dead. This iteration, however, mostly died out during the Second War. The second version were paladins seeking desperate measures to contain the scourge plaguing their lands. The most famous was Arthas Menethil, prince and paladin willing to sacrifice everything to save his people. In time, an army of Death Knights would serve Arthas, only to be freed from his mental hold following an explosion of light in Light's Hope Chapel. These newly free-willed knights formed the Knights of the Ebon Blade and joined the Horde and Alliance to end greater evils in the world.
This is a likely story that I feel parts of it have been recycled for Demon Hunters, right? I mean, the whole Demon Hunter feel when they came to Legion was like, hey, wait a second, we need to kind of join up together, and, you know, now you can play as a Demon Hunter, which I thought was really awesome.
Right. I mean, it's clear they found a great story with the Sylvanas tale. And now that that's been taken and given to the Death Knights, it's been taken and given a little bit all around. Because who doesn't like the idea of this really kick-butt character who died, was brought back against their will, committed some atrocities, broke free, and now has to live with that guilt of not being in control with themselves by going around and trying to make the world a better place.
Right, and I think it's so cool because it kind of has a Game of Thrones feel to it, where it's like, wait a second, whatever we're fighting about is not really the big deal here. Like, we actually all have to get together and fight the bigger, badder thing. If we don't, we're all going to die. So I think it's really, really neat. And Death Knight animations and the way that Death Knights look, to me, is just so cool. I mean, the way that they're drawn and the whole look of Death Knights is just, I mean, it's frozen. It's great.
Yeah, it's sharp, it's pointy, it's dark, and they even have this affliction where they suffer if they don't cause suffering. And if that isn't truly hardcore, then I don't know what is.
Yeah, it doesn't get much more hardcore than that. I love it. It's so cool. Let's get into the builds here now that we know a little bit about it. So what role classification are you going with? Because like you said at the beginning of the game, you could really go with anything.
You could. And what would be really cool, I did not go with healer, but, kind of like a plague healer. No. I've decided to go with the warrior bruiser because Garrosh has me excited for a Sonya that does even more damage.
Yeah, warrior bruiser. I mean, they look to me the most like these decked out warriors there on the battlefield. And because this is a class basically that we're forging here, what is your warrior's name? Did you give a name to one?
I did, and I'm going with Dirk Bloodsoul.
Oh, Dirk is great. So what race is your Death Knight here?
That's a good question. I like the opinion that these guys are the paladins, so you would be human.
Okay, so Dirk Bloodsoul, the human Death Knight warrior. Oh yeah, that sounds so cool. That fits in like a D&D campaign perfectly right now.
Right, except you need to make sure the player playing Dirk doesn't try to go all moody and quiet, because that doesn't make for a good game, listeners. Your character needs to be able to hold some sort of conversation.
Absolutely. Make sure you limit the amount of adult beverages that you have while playing Dirk Bloodsoul so that you can be an interesting and helpful player out there. Cool. Oh, I can't wait to hear this. Warrior's such a great idea. What's your trait?
The trait is called Addiction Affliction. Death Knights are addicted to causing suffering and death. If they don't, they feel immeasurable suffering themselves. The Death Knight takes damage the longer they go without killing or damaging something. Damage slowly turns off the dot, so the more damage you do, it builds up and turns it off. Killing a hero gives you a longer time. It immediately turns off the dot and then gives you a period of time where it won't turn on again. But killing a minion or merc simply turns it off, and as soon as you stop damaging, it'll immediately jump back on.
All right, so this is kind of like an anti-trait. I like this. So basically, you're hurting yourself if you're not doing damage.
Exactly. And why wouldn't we want that? You're supposed to be busy in this game. Busy, 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 busy. And most of the time when you're not busy, it's probably mid to late game when you're waiting for a smart engage. And you should have enough health at that point where this dot isn't going to be too scary.
Yeah, but I like this because we don't have anything like this in the game right now, where you have this, you're being forced to do something by the game or you're going to be penalized by it, and it's just on a player versus computer. I mean, you've just got to know how to play this warrior Death Knight, and I'm assuming that because it's a warrior bruiser, you're going to be in the battle, in the thick of it for most of it, so if you're doing it right, you won't be taking damage from yourself very often.
Exactly. If you're doing it right, this dot will not matter.
That is really neat. And I'm sure that because of the take of this trait, that some of his basic abilities are going to be pretty powerful. I can assume that already. So what about mounts? What are you thinking he would ride into battle?
Well, we can't ignore the winged steed of the Ebon Blade. Who doesn't want, I guess, a Draco Lich? Well, not a Draco Lich, but a skeletal dragon mount of sorts. It's just so classic Death Knight. And then for the hearth, you could summon the Death Gate.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. That's such a great idea. Oh, the Ebon Blade winged steed. I mean, that is definitely Death Knight to me, obviously. It's like really iconic. And then the Death Gate would be so cool. I love custom hearth animations. I think they're great.
They really are. And with the mount, it seems like if you sign on as a Death Knight, in the contract, you are guaranteed a skeletal dragon on which to ride. It might be one of the smaller ones, but if you choose to be a Death Knight, and I wonder how many Death Knights did that just to get the mount.
I don't know, but I agree. I think it should be in the contract. First line, welcome. Also, here's your mount.
You got to make it worth it. I mean, if you're going to suffer eternal pain, unless you're inflicting pain, it's got to be worth it. And I think a skeletal dragon is worth it.
Love it. What is your first basic ability?
The first one is called Purgatory. Now, being undead, the Death Knight has the ability to tank more damage than they have the health to take. Activating this ability allows them to amplify healing received to offset the damage being taken. If this is not enough, then the Death Knight will die.
All right, so is this a passive Q?
This is something you would activate when your health is really low. So because of this, you would want to make sure you have a healer nearby or a globe is going to drop.
All right, so this is where your give is for your trait here, right? Because you're going to gain increased healing, so it's kind of the give and take there. I love this. This is really cool. And what do you think the animation would look like for this?
Oh, man, it's hard to say because it would have to change based on how much health you have when you activate it. So maybe if you're at little health, your limbs fly off instead of you dying. Because you're undead, right? You are literally living past your health bar. So why wouldn't an undead character in Heroes not, lose limbs instead of just blowing up and dying?
Yeah, and we need more undead characters in this game as well. I mean, I know you're up for that.
Oh, well, of course. Love Sylvanas, Leoric. Undeath is a lot of fun.
Absolutely. This is really cool. I can't wait to see how it combos. Now, your next ability is your featured Forger ability.
Yes, it is. And this is called Plague Strike. It deals low damage and places a medium dot on the target for 2 seconds. However, activate it again and you deal low damage and place a dot on the target for 3.5 seconds. Any enemy within range of this target has a dot placed on them equal to the full damage of all dots currently affecting the primary target to a max of 15% of the secondary target's max HP.
So the Death Knight's Living Bomb here is really part of what we're talking about.
That is very, very true. It is Living Bomb, but it spreads much easier, much faster. And I like to imagine that when you put the dot on the person, when you activate it again, that's what puts on a second dot. And that's when you're hoping it would spread because that would be the max dot damage.
Oh, yeah, imagine. I mean, and again, this is our featured Forger ability here. So it came from Joseph's kit that Kristen put into her kit. And imagine you could control that whole Living Bomb aspect of when it was spreadable, right? Because right now, when you get that on you, you spread out and everybody's out. But if you don't get to control like the timing in between that and somebody says, oh, they're close to somebody now, I'm going to activate it again and let it spread. I mean, that's a whole nother power level.
It really is. I mean, it's a little more in control of it than Stukov, right? Just a little more control if you go that way.
Yeah, in a different way. I mean, I think that's really, really cool. Bravo, what a great ability. Let's get on to the third basic ability here.
All right, and this one is called Defile. Ramming his rune blade into the ground, the Death Knight defiles the ground around him, creating a zone of plague. Enemies in this area will suffer a plague damage dot. The more enemies under the dot, the greater the area of the defiled ground. This can be activated one more time to explode the dots on the enemies and explode the defiled ground itself.
Nice. So you can literally see the defiled ground growing underneath the characters that are standing in it because more of them are standing there.
Exactly. And maybe it has a slow to kind of trap them in there. Maybe there's a minor root, something that keeps them in there long enough to spread the dot as kind of a punishment for not predicting this is what he was going to do in the first place.
Oh, talk about awesome with that featured Forger ability where you're putting a dot on them through this and through your W over there. I mean, damage over time, Lunara ain't got nothing on that.
Exactly. And if we keep with that whole 15% of the secondary target's max HP with the W, it doesn't matter what health point they're at. It's 15% of their total HP pool. So this could outright kill people.
Oh, yeah. I love it. Tank killer, too, there as well. I mean, there's a lot of really awesome combos with those two going together. And then, of course, because your trait is forcing you to continuously be attacking, I mean, you're a death machine.
Exactly. You get these dots out there, you're fine. You don't really have to worry about auto attacks too much either. And, of course, with the increased healing you can give yourself, why wouldn't you be impossible to kill in battle?
Yeah, bruiser for sure. I love it. Let's get into heroics here and get even more bruisery, if that's a word. What's your first one?
First one is necrosis. The Death Knight chooses an enemy hero. They are now afflicted with necrosis. This is a permanent dot that cannot be cleansed. Their life now ticks away, and damage dealt by the Death Knight is doubled, or maybe even tripled later on.
Damage dealt to the person with necrosis?
Mm-hmm.
All right. This is great. First of all, gold star for the name Necrosis. I mean, that I would take that talent just on the fact that it's called Necrosis.
Oh, yeah, and I went through the Death Knight talents and traits and kind of looked through them, and the names were incredible. So most of these names are taken from there. The abilities have been altered to kind of fit this mind vision I have going on with the character, but the names are so good.
Oh, they are so good, and I love this. So even more damage over time. I mean, it would really change what we think of as damage over time. We've got the Goldans, we've got the Lunaras out there, the KTs. The damage over time is real right now. But this would be, what do you think a counter draft to this Death Knight would be? Maybe a Moralis to kind of top you off constantly so that you don't die? Are you assuming that your basic abilities are going to be doing more damage because they have a greater opportunity to escape that damage if they have the right healer?
Oh, that's a very good point. I think it would be one of those heroes like Vala, where you could really put points into your abilities, or you could put your points into your basic attacks, dependent upon the enemy team you're fighting against.
I love it. I love the way that you can build this as you go. I mean, it's so cool. Okay, what is your second heroic ability?
Right, the second one, Infected Claws. Bringer of the Plague, the Death Knight should never get close enough to deliver a swipe with his hand. If he does, those caught in this arc are infected with the plague. Now, when they attack, they occasionally hit friendly units, and this becomes more and more frequent. Now, these attacks spread the plague to their comrades if the comrades are hit. At the end of the plague spread timer, those infected deal damage equal to the damage they've output to themselves.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you want to put this on the enemy team, but it's possible that you could get it on your side.
I would say this one is strictly going to affect the enemy team.
Oh, okay.
So you hit an enemy, and now they have a 1 in 3 chance of shooting off an ability or a basic attack that is friendly fire, and it hits one of their people. Now that person is carrying the plague as well, and it just spreads from there. And then once the timer is over, everyone with the plague receives damage equal to how much they've output.
Oh, that's killer. Yeah, that's my fault. I misunderstood. I thought you meant it was your friendly units, but it's their friendly units that are getting attacked with this, possibly spreading it and spreading it and spreading it. And then do you stop dealing damage when you get this on you because you don't want to explode when the timer goes off?
That's the question, right? Because if you're an assassin, that would stink. You are pretty much out of combat unless your healer can guarantee you will be healed to full, and you need to make sure you don't output as much damage as you have health, because that could be an insta-kill.
Oh, yeah. Talk about, I mean, you could even use this for zoning, right? I mean, you could throw this down on somebody and then zone the area out because they have to leave, basically, because they can't attack anymore if this is going to blow up on them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it would be disgusting. But, it would be so great, because I love that idea of having a Death Knight with that plague spread, because that was just such an integral part of that Warcraft 3.
Oh, absolutely. In the videos I watched, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's really, really cool. Man, this kit is awesome. So how do you sum it all up, Kristen? How do you sum up your warrior bruiser Death Knight?
I would sum it up with, come on, get down with the sickness.
Perfect. Oh, that is so great. All inspired off of that featured forger ability, which is a ton of fun to do. Before we get on to my build here, we have some definite people that we need to thank. And first and foremost, we always need to thank our supporters on Patreon. Thank you so much for keeping the show going week after week. We couldn't do it without you. If you'd like to become a supporter of the show and pledge to what we do every single week, you can head on over to patreon.com/HeroesForge and check out all of our awesome goals over there. Also, we got a brand new 5-star iTunes review this week, and we want to thank jpetty22 for dropping the awesome 5-star review. Thank you so much for the kind words, and thank you to everyone that has given us a 5-star review on iTunes. It really helps the show grow. Also, a huge shout out to everyone in chat today. We're recording the show early, and yet the chat room is still full of awesome people and awesome ideas. So thank you, chat. All right, let's get on to the second build here, which is my build of the Death Knight. And I also went, not with the Bruiser though, I went with the full-on Warrior Death Knight here.
Nice. So just full plate, full everything, right? Because Death Knights can wear whatever armor they want. However, they are proficient in plate.
Yes, I believe so. I believe that is true. So I wanted this just full-on Warrior Death Knight out there, which is the Blood Death Knight, right? I mean, you're out there, that's just such a cool thought to me. I loved it. I fell in love with it instantly. And for the name, I'm actually pulling a card here. I'm pulling 2 featured forger abilities because I got this from the featured forger submission. Bellatrix was the name that Joseph G wanted for one of the Death Knights that Joseph was forging. So I was like, you know what? That's a cool name for a Death Knight. We're going with the female Death Knight here, Bellatrix the Warrior.
And Joseph made a great point with that too, because he was saying it should be a female because then the silhouette would be very, very different from Arthas, that's what it needs to be, right? Especially if you're creating a Death Knight that's going to have as much armor as Arthas has. But what race are you going with?
I think I'd go with human as well. I really thought the same thing that you did. And speaking of silhouette, with the whole Garrosh coming into the Nexus, and you were talking about those shoulder pads, I feel like he would have to have something like that because he would really blend in with the other orcs on the battlefield if he didn't.
He would, and it's so funny because Garrosh makes the other orcs look small in comparison, and I am loving it. Maybe not Rexar. Rexar is probably the biggest half-orc we have, but he's a half-orc, whereas Garrosh is full orc and just dwarfs everybody else.
Oh, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. And speaking of awesome, Joseph's build for the Death Knight came in and had this really cool trait and idea for using runes and runic power, which is a huge part of how Death Knights play in World of Warcraft. And you can check out his idea on the website. So I had to kind of compete with that. It was a really good idea, and I didn't want to pick that trait. So I had to, because there was another ability I thought was equally as cool. So I came up with my own trait. It's called Runic Power. Now, Death Knight tanks are known for their ability to heal themselves and others through taking damage. In this Death Knight kit, we're going to try to bring the feeling of playing a Death Knight tank to the Nexus, starting with Runic Power. Managing the use of runes and Runic Power seems to be one of the most complicated things for Death Knight players to do, but if done well, it's devastating to the enemy. This Death Knight kit will not have a mana bar, but instead 6 runes that will be used for abilities. Each rune has its own cooldown, and when you use a rune, it builds up your runic power for the Death Knight. So more on that when we get to basic abilities.
Definitely, and that's very much kind of like how Valeera went, right? You've got your energy bar, you've got your combo skills, and that's very close to how they play in Warcraft.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I thought. I thought, is this going to be too much? And then I thought of Valeera, and I thought of the opportunity there that they're not afraid to add, not only energy, combo points, runes, runic power. You really got to master the flow and rotation of what you're doing to gain maximum DPS, or in this case, maximum healing.
Which is probably a fascinating journey in terms of character design for the designers, because how do you make it work in the Nexus while still maintaining the feel of that character in a vastly different game?
Oh, vastly. Also, with the same amount of people that are passionate about what you're doing, right? When you're in Warcraft, like I've been playing a Demon Hunter in Warcraft for a long time now, since the expansion came out. And if they brought another Demon Hunter to the Nexus, I'd be like, well, this doesn't feel right. right? Or this feels exactly the way I wanted it to feel. You know, it's one or the other when it comes to this stuff that people have poured so much time into. So the Death Knight would be tough when it came to something like that. Now, as for the mounting ability, I'm going with the Vile Brood Vanquisher, which is the class mount for Death Knights. Kristen, you hit the nail on the head. You gotta have that. You gotta have that dragon that is basically the Death Knight dragon.
Exactly. And I mean, it's basically get your dragon or riot, because you don't see Arthas without Sindragosa. I mean, Sindragosa is even one of his heroics. And if Arthas gets a dragon, I sure as heck want a dragon.
That's right. Equal rights for all Death Knights out there. That's what I'm voting for. All right, next one, basic abilities here. This one's called Death Strike, and this one uses all of your runic power to cast. So again, you have 6 runes, and each time you use a rune, you're given runic power. So let's assume that you've used your other abilities to gain runic power, and you're going to use it all on Death Strike. So the Death Knight reels back and smashes down her two-handed axe, Maw of the Damned, on the enemy, dealing a large amount of damage. When this strike hits the enemy, the Death Knight will be healed for a percentage of the damage that was dealt to them over the last 5 seconds. This ability also uses the runic power that the Death Knight has saved and applies that to the heal percentage as well. So the heal that you're receiving here is directly a percentage of how much damage has been done to you, not how much damage Death Strike is doing to the enemy.
Oh, interesting. So basically, you'd want to soak as much damage as possible, then cast this as soon as you can, once you're probably below about half health or so.
Yeah, and you want to make sure that you also have runic power on top of it, because that will give you even a greater heal. Imagine if your runic power bar was full and you'd taken a bunch of damage, you're about to die, you wield your two-handed master axe thing that looks so sick, and you just hit the enemy with it and you're just fully healed. I mean, it could be that good if you timed it right.
Totally, and I love this thing because it's like Hearthstone, right? Each one of your abilities is a card, and you have 6 mana in your thing that you charge up. And so you have to cast your abilities based on the situation, but also the amount of mana. Yeah, the amount of those gems that you have.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's a super cool way to play Death Knights, which is actually how they play in Warcraft, and I can't wait to get my hands on it and to play more. Next one is called Death's Caress, and this is the second basic ability. Now, this one's going to cost 1 rune to use, so when you use it, this 1 rune, you're gaining runic power, but you're losing that 1 rune. So it applies disease to a target that does ticking damage. The disease spreads to other enemies that come in range of it. If the disease is spread to 2 or more targets, it will begin to heal the Death Knight for a percentage of the damage that is being dealt. This ability costs 1 rune to cast, and each time it's cast will feed the Death Knight runic power. This is directly from World of Warcraft in a way. I mean, it's this Death's Caress can be cast onto an enemy and it immediately starts healing you for it. But there's a lot of that in this kit already. So I was like, well, if it spreads to 2 or more with the Great Minds moment that we had, Kristen, where, I mean, something about Death Knights means that these abilities are going to spread.
It's a disease. It's the whole disease idea, which is part and parcel for the Death Knight story, because they are so connected to the Scourge. And I love this, that the way you kept it contained is that 2 or more. And then it sounds like if you do it right, this will be an unstoppable tank, a literal tank that can just keep going. Stitches his self-heal. Imagine if you could cast that every 3 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, you're really going to have to draft a Stukov to kind of silence the crap out of this guy and keep him, which Stukov silences are real, #real out there in the Nexus. So I think when we gain more abilities like those silences that are on basic abilities, that heroes like this can be brought into the Nexus that are just super powerful and able to heal themselves off of this. Now, the third basic ability here is called Bone Shield, and this one costs 3 runes to cast. So you only have 6 total that all go on cooldown, and this one costs 3 runes. So using this ability uses 3 runes and gives the Death Knight 3 stacks of Bone Shield. Each stack of bone shield will prevent damage from the next attack, no matter what kind of attack it was, basic, ability, anything. Each stack will drop off when the Death Knight is attacked. So basically you've got these 3 Hearthstone shield points, basically, and if somebody hits you with any sort of attack, it will take one of the shield points off and then move on to the next one.
I gotcha. You were playing Mario Kart this weekend, and you had a red shell circle of protection. I love this. So now visually, what 3 images? Because I would imagine it's 3. 1 gets knocked off, there are now 2, then 1. I mean, that would be the easiest way to visualize it, right?
Right, so like Zul's Shade, right, where you cast that and he's kind of got these bones going around him. That's kind of a recycled idea for me, but I picture it like that, like it is in World of Warcraft, where these bones are basically flying around you and you've got this bone armor. But maybe you do just have an awesome set of bone armor that comes up that shows you're protected. Maybe the enemy doesn't know how many attacks it will take to have your armor fall off. Maybe that's a talent.
Maybe. Oh, that could be. And it gives you a variable number of attacks that you get to play with, not to mainly keep the enemy team from knowing what it would take. Ooh, that's wicked. Now, how would this shield last indefinitely, or would it fade after a period of time if you haven't received damage?
I think that it lasts indefinitely, but you can't cast it again on yourself until your shield goes away.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, so, and again, it costs 3 runes to cast, so you're not going to be casting this very often, and you're going to want to be in the battle because you are that survivable tank. Talk about survivability. As I'm reading this, I'm thinking maybe it's a little OP. You're really in there and able to take a crap ton of damage with stuff like this. And speaking of, let's get onto the heroics, and there might even be a featured forger ability in here. So the first heroic is called Death and Decay, and this one costs 6 runes to cast. So you gotta have full runes when you run into the battle with Death and Decay. Now the Death Knight chooses an AoE circle on the battlefield and casts Death and Decay, a large decaying blood circle on the battlefield that will deal ticking damage to all enemies in the area and return all damage dealt by this ability to the Death Knight as health. While inside this circle, the Death Knight's basic attacks will have cleave.
Nice. Oh, this is wonderful. This is it's that Stitches Slime 20, but you don't need to move around. You just stand there. So how big is this circle?
I'm thinking pretty big. I was thinking like somewhere in between a Hyperion size and a Maw. So somewhere like in between those 2 sizes.
Oh my goodness. So you basically set the battleground down and the enemy team has to retreat. I mean, it would be a suicide to run in and fight this.
Yeah, it's kind of like fighting in an earthquake, right? Or, you know, like they always say on Into the Nexus, run out of the earthquake, don't fight there. I mean, that's not a great place to engage into a battle, but what if the earthquake was on your team and you throw this Death and Decay down and then you throw an earthquake down and then, you know, you come in with the sanctification and everybody's just dead. GG.
Oh, the cleave. I love that idea of a cleave. To just hit I mean, how many would the cleave hit everybody who's in range of this thing?
Yeah, so this is just your basic attack. So while the Death Knight is inside the circle, if they're in range of this cleave from the basic attacks of this 2-handed axe, they're going to take the damage from it. It almost turns your basic attack into an ability, right? Because you're hitting multiple targets here.
Totally. So what size would this cleave be then? What's the maximum number of heroes you could hit with it? Would the range extend also?
I think it would extend outward, right? So you could probably have the same distance as an additional hero on each side of your target that you would be able to cleave damage with. I mean, just making that up, but I think that would probably work.
Totally. Oh, and I mean, of course, giving your basic ability the power to hit more than one target alone is pretty darn powerful. I mean, how many times on a hero do you take an ability that lets you hit more than one target? It's most of the time it's a really, really strong choice.
Oh, totally. And I foresee that being a trait for a hero in the game in the future where, you know, the basic attacks of this hero can hit more than one target. I mean, that's a really cool trait. Simple, but powerful.
Yeah, especially if you're talking about heroes who are basic attack heroes, right? Not burst spell ability. Maybe Garrosh even.
Ooh, maybe even Garrosh. Who knows? I mean, we'll find out soon. They're just rolling out all this stuff really quick. So the next ability is my second heroic, and I saved this one for last because this is my featured forager ability from Joseph's kit here. It's called Death Grip, and I couldn't pass this one up. I had to give it a rune assignment for my trait, so I'm saying that this one costs 3 runes to cast, so half as many runes as you have total. And it creates a small circle on the ground, and after a short delay, an enemy hero is pulled to your location and stunned for 0.5 seconds. Like a small minion, it could theoretically snag 2 heroes if they're in this circle. Heck yeah, way to zone, way to bring people to you, way to just do a whole bunch of really cool stuff. And it's different than my other heroic, so it fits a situational talent choice.
Totally, and this one is more one-on-one than it is group damage, which is always really nice to have the option between the two based on what you're fighting, because, you know, you're either going to need one or the other probably. So with this one, could you throw the circle out ahead of you, and then as you walk to it, someone's pulled toward it?
Oh, I would think so. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what his thoughts were, but I love that idea. I mean, I think that's great. And I'm also wondering if it's the small circle, if the heroes have to be in the small circle and then they're pulled to you, because that's how I read it. So like you put the circle on the ground and then the heroes that are in that circle, when the delay is over, they get pulled to you. So if there's more than one in there, but I love your thought too. Like, what if you just put it down and if there's a hero that's in range of this ability, they get pulled to the circle? Talk about, you can set up your alley-oops really easy there.
Okay, right. So, okay, cool. Now I see what's going on here. You put the circle on somebody. That's who's targeted. They're the one who's pulled to you. Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. But with the marriage of the two, what if you choose 2 targets where they're pulled to and who's going to be pulled?
Oh yeah, there's so many ways you could go with this. I mean, that literally is an alley-oop where you would be able to show your team like this person is gonna go there, and then they just go there, and you're ready to land an Uther stun. I mean, that's a great idea too.
Yep, surround and conquer, and then it's a bit more powerful than a Stitches hook because you don't have to be trained in aiming skill shots. This is simply point and click. You just got to be good with determining where the fight's not going to be and who would be the best target to put in that displaced area.
Totally. And this is ideas like this kind of are marrying the whole Sylvanas mind control, where you don't really know what's going to happen to that hero because you're controlling them. But it also marries the idea of like a Medivh portal. It's an anti-Medivh portal here that you're talking about. Oh, what a great idea. It could go so many ways. That was the featured forge ability that built my whole kit. And again, on this kit that Joseph built, it's got an awesome trait and you need to check it out. It builds out really, really, really well with some awesome synergy. But before we can call this hero forged, well, first of all, I need to sum up my Death Knight here. The survivable tank that can live through almost anything, if not silence. So it would have to be counterpicked. Maybe it's not a great time to put in the Nexus now, but we're getting there with silences and stuff being more readily available. Maybe just one day. So let's get into dance moves and specialty skins, Kristen. Let's start with your specialty skin. What were you thinking for your Death Knight?
I think the best specialty skin we can have for this Death Knight is Artorias from Dark Souls. It would wear the legendary armor, and Death Knight Artorias would wield his rune blade in his offhand because his good one is broken. And any summons he might have are wolves that look like Sif.
Oh yeah, what an awesome model in that game. I mean, it fits perfectly.
And the story too, right? It's a knight who goes out to try and stop the abyss from spreading, who eventually falls to the abyss's power. It connects, it rhymes. It's beautiful.
That's right. It's all an intertwining story of awesome. I dig it. So let's get into my specialty skin. The first one I'm saying, you could definitely have some sort of like medieval plague mask Death Knight, right? Because we're constantly talking about plague, we're constantly talking about all that stuff. So yeah, like one of those plague masks that's got the super long snout.
Well, you'd have to, right? And I mean, who would know how to spread the plague better than the people who are trying to stop it?
Ooh, that's right. And then my second idea was a plastic surgeon blood death knight. So like bringing it into that occupational skin realm and saying this one would be a plastic surgeon.
Nice. So would they have a really creepy, surreal face that's been operated on a bit too much? What would they wear? What would their armor be?
Well, they wouldn't have armor, Kristen. That's a great... we're bending reality in the fashion of King Candy Mirrodin here, and we're saying that they would be a super plastic surgeon, and instead of a two-handed axe that they wield, they would be wielding like one of those surgery lights on a pole.
Oh, nice. They like throw scalpels and stuff. I mean, oh man. And when you take down an enemy hero, maybe you carve up their face.
Taking it one step further. Always love it. Now, the next thing we talk about is dance moves. My dance move for the Death Knight would be what I'm calling the drunk cup dance. You know when you like go to a party or a wedding or whatever, and there's always those people that have their cups up into the air and they're kind of dancing like they're, think that they're cool. That would be this Death Knight, but with a chalice instead of a red cup.
Oh, that's fantastic. And then the chalice, too, you could fill it with orange juice, milk, whatever to match the skin, right? That's a really cool idea. Just one off to his homie Arthas.
That's right. Pouring out to his homie Arthas. I love it. What's your dance move?
I was thinking he could do the get swifty. Hey, take your pants off. It's swifty time.
That's
and,
right.
he's just pretending to hold a microphone and just bobbing up and down.
The amount of money I wouldn't pay in order to see a Death Knight do the Get Swifty dance. I mean, I better start saving now.
Right? And every time, maybe too, when you activate it, you hear, show me what you got. And then you show it what you got, and you're all safe to play the rest of the game.
That's it. We can definitely say that this hero, after Get Swifty, was forged.
HeroesForge.
What an awesome build sent to us by Joseph G to help forge these characters, these Death Knights. Kristen, they can go a million ways. You can have DPS, like you said, you could even have a support Death Knight if you kind of worked your way into that. Also, you could have the tanks and the bruisers that we talked about today. I mean, bravo, Joseph. What a great build, and it's always inspiring to see everybody that sends us builds. I mean, we get some builds that have percentages and damage dealing, and I mean, they put so much time and effort into it, and we appreciate every single one of them, and it's a ton of fun to talk about on the show.
Yes, the ideas are fantastic, and it really shows the color and the variation that all of these heroes have regardless of their place within the Blizzard universe. And it really makes me wonder if perhaps in the future we're going to see a lot of heroes with multiple class distinctions where you get to choose at the start of the match what you're going to be. Now, in all reality, that probably won't work out too well because you could troll your team on purpose, say you'll go healing but then don't. But the whole idea of having a hero that could fit every role based on what you need has always been a love of mine, I think, especially on this show.
Oh, yeah, the flexibility and the fun of putting it all together. I mean, it's a huge part of it. So, Death Knights, Kristen, any final thoughts? Do you think we could see another Death Knight to take up arms with Arthas in the Nexus?
I think if we did, Arthas would receive the biggest, best rework he's ever received. He'll top all the charts as the highest win rate hero. And only after that moment, that prophesied event, would we see another Death Knight.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. As much as I would love to see another Death Knight in there, Arthas is, I mean, he holds the crown, right? He's up there as the Death Knight of all. So it's kind of, it would be so awesome to see another one. And a rework, I was thinking as well. When you get into these heroes like Uther, Arthas, these characters that are named characters that are basically classes from World of Warcraft, Paladins, Death Knights, things like that, Do you think that if they started morphing them to play like a specific style of Death Knight, like if they took Arthas and said, this is going to be our DPS Death Knight, that would be an avenue for them to bring the tank Death Knight, to bring the, so they'd have to do some crazy reworks to make it work.
They really would. And of course, there's that whole thing, can the named characters ever live up to the expectations we have in our heads of these heroes? Because in their story, they were the hero. But here we are facing off against 9 other people. We're playing with 4 others, facing off against 5 enemies, and you're 3 levels down, and suddenly Arthas, the Lich King, who was the greatest thing ever when you were growing up, just dies all the time.
Yeah, but then this no-named Death Knight that they just came up with just happens to be the best hero in the game, and then it goes from there. So, I mean, Heroes does have that secret sauce that is all of these characters that we know and love, but that can be a challenge, I'm sure, when creating these characters for the Nexus. A huge thank you again to Joseph for sending in this kit. If you have an idea for a hero that you would like to see on the featured Forger episode, which happens about the 3rd week of every month, you can send it to us in a million different ways. One of them is to visit our website, which is HeroesForge.club, and you can click on the contact tab at the top and send us your idea from there. Also, you could send us an email at contactheroesforge@gmail.com with all of your information. It doesn't have to be a full kit. It can just be an idea for a hero or something wacky that you'd like to see on the show. And thank you to everyone that has sent us ideas. We're getting to all of them as quickly as possible. There's a ton of awesome ideas out there. Kristen, where can people find you in the interwebs when you're not on this show?
In the interwebs, you can find me at Dream Destroyer, that is DRMDESTRYR, over at Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.
And what are you working on your streams now?
Well, we are working on Batman Arkham City. We're getting through that pretty well. We just defeated Ra's al Ghul. That was a really cool fight. And then with The Witcher, we are on the final DLC, Blood and Wine. And I have a feeling this next week is going to be very bittersweet as we bid goodbye to Witcher 3.
Oh, bittersweet. Then you're just going to have to wait for Witcher 4.
I know. Well, that's the hard part, right? Because the trilogy is just this complete wonderful thing. I don't know if I want another Witcher. I'm not saying that they couldn't do it right, but, you know, it's a closed story, and I felt these bittersweet emotions. Why would that be betrayed with another Witcher? I have felt the parting.
Yeah, and you feel the same way about that like I do with Toy Story 4.
Right? They are coming out with the Toy Story 4. And Toy Story 3, we all accepted death together. That ending was intense. And then we all cried, of course, at the end with the passing on to the next generation. Why is there 4? Yeah.
No one knows. Well, maybe it'll be great. Maybe it will be great. If you're looking for me, you can find me right here on Heroes Forge. We record the show live every Sunday night at 7 p.m. Pacific. And you can find us on twitch.tv/Amove TV because we are a part of the Amove TV podcast and entertainment network. Check out Amove.tv for more great esports and video game podcasts. You can follow this show on Twitter at Forge Heroes, where we put up our vote for which one of the kits you think was the better of the two, and then the winner weekly gets to choose the next hero that we forge. Get out there and vote, people. I already told you about the website, I told you about the email, but a huge thank you again to all of our patrons at patreon.com/HeroesForge for supporting the show. And you can download this show on any of your favorite podcasting apps, including iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and all of those. So, Kristen, any final thoughts on the Death Knight before we call this show?
It's a trope that I personally really enjoy. The falling to something you stood against and then dealing with the ramifications of that change. I love the style. I love the design. I love the idea of plague, blood. It's just so disgustingly gothic.
Yeah, it's great. It really is gothic. It feels really, really great. And who knows, maybe someday we will have another Death Knight in the Nexus. Until then, we'll all be fighting one in the Tri mode. We're going to call the show now. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you all in the real world.